Well, hey.
What's up and what's up?
What's up
How's
and
it going?
what's up?
Yeah.
We have to address, before we do anything, the fact that this is an exciting episode.
It is.
Because it's the first one that officially is a podcast.
Yeah.
In the places where you get to listen to podcasts.
Right.
And just listen.
And not just...
So we've been doing this for a little while. If you are picking up here and you're like, whoa, I really like the sound of Billy and Layna talking to each other, and you want more of that, all of the previous episodes are still on our YouTube, so you can go back.
You can go back.
But they'll be wherever you listen to podcasts.
Yeah, we're going to start putting them at the podcast, which is awesome, because it's actually what this is. You know what I mean? And so it's been really awesome to be part of this with you, just to kind of recap, to bring some depth, to bring just a different perspective on things, give somebody a thought for the week, remind them of what they listened to yesterday.
Yep.
All good. Yeah,
lots
all good.
of fun. So
really
official
fun.
welcome.
Yeah.
To the At the Table podcast.
Yeah, sounds good.
Super fun.
Yeah.
Okay. So
one of the things that I heard was that you just came back from the college ministry camping retreat. We had a college ministry to Porch, and you just came back from the camping trip.
Yes, our young adults went camping this weekend, and it rained a good amount.
This was kind of an off and on thunderstorm, rainy weekend.
It was a really soggy weekend. We had some beautiful weather, and we had a awesome time together. So I'm going to start with that. And then the next thing I'm going to say is I am actively working to forget the miserable parts of the weekend, because...
So there were miserable parts of the weekend.
There were some really miserable parts of the weekend.
Why is it that camping always has a story?
Camping... Well, that's why you go camping, right? Nobody goes camping because they're like, I'm going to go have a boring time.
That's always a story.
But this was perhaps the most exciting.
Okay.
Our group affectionately referred to Sunday morning, our cleanup time, as the season finale of our camping trip, because in a weekend that we started Thursday night, okay, so it wasn't even just like Friday to Sunday. We started Thursday night because that's when our young adult group meets. So we'd been out there, and each night, truly like clockwork, around 7:00, it started pouring rain. It's been so humid this week, and thunderstorms happen. Sure. So, pouring rain, thunderstorms, whatever. But Sunday morning was the first morning that it had decided to rain, which was really inconvenient because that was the morning we had to pack everything up. So we're just like tearing stuff down, throwing it in the cars, like just get it back to church and we can like organize it indoors where it's not gonna be raining on our head. So the culminating event was so Phil and I had brought our dogs along on the camping trip, and
which is a story in itself.
Those dogs are crazy. Those dogs are crazy. The 9-month-old German Shepherd is the craziest of all. But the problem actually landed in our 9-year-old poodle mix, who, when I shoved them in our car to keep them contained while we were pulling everything apart, Mia, the tiny one, hit the lock button.
On the door handle?
On the door handle.
Oh, man.
And the keys were in the car. So we were locked out of our car in the pouring rain. And so we had to spend a significant amount of time.
Oh my gosh.
And dude, things just, those times that, the true, when it rains, it pours. This was a true representation.
That is true. When it rains, it pours. Now, okay. Did you have to get a locksmith?
So we called one, but we got into the car before they got there. So we didn't have to pay for a locksmith.
I see.
We have a damaged seal now on the door, but I would take a slightly damaged seal over a overpriced locksmith charge any day.
Man, that would have been something.
Yeah, you should have. Man,
they were
like, I've got videos. I'll show you later.
You probably didn't listen to the sermon yesterday.
This is the first time that I have been at the table.
Good excuse. You were out with a whole lot of college students and things, and it's funny because you're talking about a hardship, and I defined bad things. I defined that in the very beginning of the message. We use the term, "Oh man, a bad thing happened." Well, what was a bad thing? Well, bad thing is something, an event that affects us negatively, either physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually, or all four. And it sends us into a moment or a season of hardship.
Okay.
And so for you, it might have been a moment.
It was just a moment, but
so can I ask you a question? Usually you're asking me questions.
Yeah,
but let me ask you a question.
Please do.
When you realized your dog locked you out of the car and it was pouring down rain, what was your response to that hardship? Though in the bigger scheme of things, not a big deal, but in the moment, it's like, you're kidding me. We're packed up. We got to go. And now we can't go. It's like, oh, man.
Yeah. I think I'm going to be honest. I can't even remember exactly what the first thought was, but we spent some time taunting Mia, trying to get her to like step over.
Oh my gosh! You're trying to get the step on the button again.
Just like dancing all over it.
I
think though, like
bad plan, by the way.
Yeah, it didn't work. It didn't work at all. But I think that what ended up happening, and I'm thankful that we had the whole group there, because there is something about like being in a group where, especially when you're leading the group, I couldn't freak out, right? Because like there's a sense of accountability there. Like I can't start throwing things because people are gonna see that. So we're gonna keep it together. A couple deep breaths. But our group was really awesome, and everybody was just like, we'll solve it, and made the best of a bad situation. We laughed.
That's so good. That's
it was
so good. My response is always, and I catch myself. It's always, you've got to be freaking kidding me.
Yeah.
You've got to be joking. And then I just start thinking through this, and I'm like, all right. And then I get my head together.
Phil and I kind of made eye contact, and we were just like, and I like went over at one point. I was like, I am so sorry, because I'm the one who left the keys in the car. So I will say, like, I left the keys there.
That's cool.
I will take that ownership, and then I'll take the ownership, and then immediately pass it all off onto the tiny dog. But
the dog.
we kind of made the best of it, and
it's a good model, though. It's a good model to make the best of it.
Yeah.
There was some reason that happened, and you'll never know it. Or maybe you will come to know it.
But it's a story. Might be the reason.
The story might be the reason. It's
just
a story, how you responded, or it could be that at that moment in time you were going to drive your car and there was going to be a truck that didn't see the intersection or something like that. We never know those things. That's why it's so imperative that we look at the hardships in a far different way than I look at them when they first happen.
Yeah.
And I'm working on it.
Yeah.
I think it's like,
Well, it's really hard to have your first response be one of like, oh boy, God's doing something with me.
Yeah, this is awesome. This is great. Oh, man.
This is so fun. I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
But that doesn't, that doesn't have to be our first response. We can recognize, man, I'm in a really frustrating situation right now.
Yeah.
And also recognize that God's working. We actually, we went through Ephesians over the weekend, and there's a verse in there that says, be angry and do not sin. Like the juxtaposition of you can be angry and not sinning at the same time. And I think that same is true. Like you can be frustrated and not sinning. It has so much to do with our response. Am I responding impulsively, or am I responding after having...
Exactly right. That's a really good way to look at it, because sometimes when something really negative happens, or even something like you did, there's a response mechanism in us that has to get real serious real quick.
Yep.
Like, okay, we've got a problem here. We've got to solve the problem.
Yep.
Yeah. And there's a good side to that. You're an athlete. When you play games, when I played sports and everything, stress, they say healthy stress elevates your blood pressure, gets you ready for the fight, gets you ready for everything, and it's a healthy thing. But if you let it go overboard, what happened to me is something that's classic in the textbooks, that I'm running with the ball and I don't see the other tacklers because I have tunnel vision. Stress gave me tunnel vision. And when I wasn't stressed, you could see the whole field and just kind of have fun, But man, when it's just like, oh, just get over there, and you're not playing your best. Same way when something negative happens, it's almost like, that is okay for a minute, as long as we keep that in check and say, okay, something has happened. We got to get serious.
Right.
Let's figure it out.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a good outcome to this. You know what I mean? no matter what.
And so, lest anybody think that we're just talking about our camping trip here at the table, this is actually what you preached about yesterday.
Yeah.
Because we started a series yesterday about the life of Joseph, and it's called Intended for Good, right? And you talked about the kind of beginning of Joseph's life, and that guy faced some hardship beyond it raining on a camping trip.
Yeah,
okay?
I mean,
so
if you just recount some of the things, okay, he was given a coat by a father who was leading a dysfunctional family. Okay,
incredibly dysfunctional.
Because he admitted and
that
lived
thing had
out
so many branches
that Joseph was his favorite son, and everybody knew it, and he admitted it. So that's like dysfunctional come out of the gate. So he flaunted, that whole thing, and it's just like it even says that he tattled on his brothers all the time, and then it said that he had a dream, and the dream was about stalks of wheat bowing down to one stalk of wheat, and they're like, "You telling us you're going to be the king?"
Right.
And they're angry. At this point, they're like, "We're done with him." You know what I mean? Then he had another dream that he told his dad with the moon and stars. His dad was like, "Are you serious, Jacob? Well, are you kidding me? You think your mom and I are going to bow down to you?" But he made sure he told his dad while his brothers were there. You know what I mean? Just pushing buttons, pushing buttons, pushing buttons, pushing
he was a nudge.
buttons.
He was a nudgy little kid.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah. Yep.
And so when he gets sent out to find the brothers, finally catches up with them, they're like, "Oh, let's kill him and see what happens to his dream then." And then Reuben was like, "All right, don't kill him. Let's just throw him in this empty well."
Reuben, the voice of reason.
Voice of reason. He was going to come and rescue him later, but too late. Because a caravan of Ishmaelite traders came. They sold Joseph into slavery, got their 20 pieces of silver, and then faked his death. And for them, unless there was some residual guilt, story's over.
Which when you think of that story, man, Joseph's story just baffles me, because first of all, the level of the difference in culture, right? You get a little brother walking out to find his brothers, and they're like, "We're gonna kill him." I mean, I know he was a jerk, but yikes.
But did he deserve that? And that was my point yesterday, is like, that was hatred. That was like dislike kind of hatred. And then for them to sell him into slavery and beat him and tear his coat off, abuse. And then for them to sell him into slavery and just say goodbye, that's abandonment. When you got hatred, abuse, and abandonment, that's a bad day. That's a bad day. That's the season I'm talking about. That's a hardship. Well, I mean, he ends up getting sold to Potiphar, who sees Joseph's gifts. And I talked about that yesterday in the sermon. Like, he saw something in Joseph. Well, what did he see? Some really good things. You guys can check it out and listen to it if you haven't. But here's the thing. Everything turned good. And it's like, wow, God is blessing me. He's showing me his gifts. He's kind of expanding who I am, and I didn't even know I was this person until a bad thing happened, and then a good thing happened, and God needed all that to happen, bad and good. Then bad happened again. His wife, Potiphar's wife, kind of lied about him raping her and all that. It's like, come on, man, come on. Or attempting to. And then he gets thrown in jail. Another bad thing. Then the jailer sees all these gifts in Joseph, and he's like, how about you run my jail? Run the prison.
Which, if you're gonna be in a bad situation, that's the best kind of bad situation you can be in, right?
And Joseph's like looking at this, and God is still using his gifts and really refining and honing in on his gifts and expanding that, because there's something in the future that he needs to have Joseph, I guess, arise to the occasion. And the only way he was going to do that was through a hardship. Sometimes that's the only way we learn. I wish that was not the case. But sometimes it is.
And each of those really does have a lesson that he learns, and something that he kind of takes away from each of the hardships that he faces.
Without a doubt. God was doing something good in the midst of something bad. God was developing his skill. And then, do you remember the part about the baker and the cupbearer?
Yes. So the two guys come in. They've both had dreams, right? And
they were thrown in prison, and they had dreams.
Joseph is familiar with dreams. No
doubt. That's what I'm saying.
We saw it at the beginning, and it actually says that God gave him the ability to interpret.
And he
dreams.
gave credit to God. He said, interpreting dreams is God's business.
Yep.
Go ahead and tell me your dream.
Yep. Which is really cool. And so he heard him, and it was good news for the cupbearer, bad news for the baker.
Bad news for the baker.
Which is ultimately what ended up happening. Yeah. And as the cupbearer was kind of reinstated into his position, I know Joseph asked, remember me.
Yeah.
And then he didn't. And
he didn't. And
Joseph
it was 2 years he left behind,
Yeah.
left in prison, doing his thing, managing the prison, but he was still in jail.
Yeah.
And so then you have this other bad thing that happened to him, which is he was forgotten.
Right.
Man, it just keeps happening. So one of the points that was made yesterday is that, man, bad things are going to happen. We know that through our experience. We know that also because of what Jesus said, in this world, you will have many trials and sorrows, but take heart because I have overcome the world. And I love when Jesus says that, because he knows we're going to go through these things. We are going to go through these things. And I know that we have a couple more weeks in this sermon series, but enough to say that God was in love with Joseph and was with Joseph every step of the way. No matter what we go through, we know that God has a reason for it. He's with us. He loves us. And if we could cling on to that, and I mean really, really, really live that out, instead of my first response of, being, you got to be joking, man, you got to be kidding. This is happening to me. Right? It ought to be, okay, we need to fix this. We need to figure this out. But God has something in this for me, and maybe even the people around me. Right. I need to get there.
And the reality is, I might never know what it is. I mean, where we left off in Joseph's story is not the end of Joseph's story, because there's another week and a half that we have there. But at this point, I mean, 2 years is a good amount of time, and he's sitting there thinking, I'm forgotten.
That's exactly what he's thinking.
And this is over. But he was not. He was forgotten by the people, but never by God.
Never, and he knew that too. Yeah.
So that's huge.
Great point.
That's something to walk
I mean,
away
I think that's the main thrust of everything that was talked about yesterday. That leads us to next week.
Yep.
And I mean, we'll get into that next week. But it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge for us to really have the response that Joseph had when he was going through hardships, so they can tell us. I mean, that's the whole reason that story is in the scripture. God knows we're going to be living life, and life is going to be hard in a lot of moments. So how do we deal with it?
Yeah. And that is a good question. So maybe let's just leave it off there.
We dive into that
just
next
leave it off
week
with that
and
question.
Week after
talk some more
and all that.
Week,
yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, next week I will be a little bit more energized. Probably I won't still be recovering from the wild weekend, and I will have heard the sermon before we talk.
That's all good. All right.
Have a great week, everybody.
See you next week.
Yep.